So, good morning, everybody. Welcome to City of San Mateo General Plan Community Workshop. We're at the King Center, and it's great to see a full room with everybody here to participate and provide your input. So, with me this morning is Mayor Diane Pappen, who's going to provide a brief greeting.
Your participation is crucial. We've talked about it many times at the city, but the fact that you are here on a Saturday morning to give of your time and your mind is so important. I've said it at these meetings before. Democracy is not a spectator sport. We are delighted to hear from you in any way, shape, or form we can. We have in life nothing but our time. So this city and the future of our city. I tried to be my 14-year-old because I was like, it's about your future. But apparently her phone was too important this morning. But I will get her opinion nonetheless, because this really is about our future. And forethought is not always an easy thing. And we're most grateful for yours. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Avelia, who has a quick, brief announcement for our bilingual participants.
Gracias. Buenos días. Evelia Chaires from Peninsula Conference Resolution Center, y mi mesa es la número 10. Cualquier persona que se sienta más cómoda hablando en español, mesa número 10, estamos ahí. Muchas gracias, y su feedback, su información es muy importante para la ciudad de San Mateo.
Okay. My name is Joanna Jansen. I work for a company called PlaceWorks, and we are the city's consultant for the general plan update and the Strive San Mateo process. I'm going to give you a brief presentation today, but today is mostly about us hearing from you and your small groups and having you really get a chance to speak to each other about your ideas for the future of San Mateo. We do, I want to echo the welcome that's already been extended. Thank you so much for being here. As we get started, I want to ask you if you could take a moment to introduce yourselves to someone you don't know at your table. You'll have a chance to meet everyone at your table when we start the small group discussions. Right now, I just want to ask you to turn to the person next to you on either side, shake their hand, ask them what their name is and what they hope to learn here today. So these are our goals today. We want to provide an inclusive and informed dialogue about the future of San Mateo. We want to connect you as community members to each other and also to this process, to your staff and decision makers, to understand what the possibilities are for the future and how you can influence those possibilities. Specifically, we have an exercise to brainstorm ideas about future locations for housing, job, and transportation options in San Mateo. And we also want you to leave today understanding that this meeting is one source of input and one step in a much larger process that I hope you will all continue to be a part of. I see a lot of familiar faces here and some new faces as well, so that's fantastic. Throughout this process, it's going to be crucial to get a lot of community input. Your council has been very clear with us as your consultant team and with city staff that receiving a broad and extensive and representative, meaningful community engagement throughout the general plan update is very important to the success of this process. So since August, September, October, city staff and our teammates from the Peninsula Conflict Resolution Center have been going to events throughout San Mateo. We've been to about a dozen different events at September nights, at the farmers market, at the Boys and Girls Club, at the Dia de los Muertos event. And we've been hearing from you and your neighbors about the issues that are most important to you and the types of changes that you'd like to see. Avelia has also been doing some kind of one-on-one outreach, particularly to the Spanish-speaking community, to make sure that we're hearing from folks from all members of the San Mateo community. And throughout all of those different events across the city, we've heard some common themes and issues that people are very concerned about and would like to see addressed through the general plan update process. That includes issues of traffic congestion and traffic safety, transit improvements, improvements that will make it easier and safer to walk in San Mateo, completing sidewalks, crosswalks, adding more lighting. On-street parking issues. I know that's certainly an issue here in the neighborhood that we're in right now today, as you probably experienced. Affordable housing and being able to have some stability in terms of housing. And then finally, both an appreciation of the events and community gatherings that happen here in San Mateo that are already a part of our culture here, and also a desire to see that continue and perhaps increase over the future, whether that's through parks or recreation or different activities. All of those are examples of things that the general plan can influence, and all of those are things that you can say more about today in your small group exercises. In addition to the community input that we hear, we also are mindful of the state requirements for this process. A general plan is a required long-range planning document that every city and county in California has to have. And because it's a state requirement, there's also state parameters for what needs to be in the general plan and the range of topics that it needs to address. You can see in the orange box on this slide, we talk not only about land use, but also about transportation or circulation, housing, conservation, open space, parks, environmental justice, safety, noise, urban design, a whole range of topics that influence your life here in San Mateo every day. So we do have to be mindful of both how the residents would like to see the general plan influence these topics and the regional and state obligations that the city has under state law. So how are we going to plan together? How will we get there? The foundation is based on the hard work of many of you in this room and of hundreds of other neighbors and community members in San Mateo, as well as the General Plan Steering Committee, Subcommittee rather, the Planning Commission, and the City Council, who have given us some great direction on a really inspirational vision statement for the City of San Mateo and for the General Plan that will inform our work throughout the project. The vision statement is up on the screen, and we have it on the posters here, and that you can see that can inform your discussions here today. So San Mateo is a vibrant, livable, diverse, and healthy community that respects the quality of its neighborhoods, fosters a flourishing economy, is committed to equity, and is a leader in environmental sustainability. And that vision is then supported by values of diversity, balance, inclusivity, prosperity, and resiliency. So we talk about this at every meeting because it keeps us focused on what's important and what the community has said they want to achieve through this general plan update. We are at the very early stages of this process still. Visioning was the first step along with information gathering. And now we're going to create land use alternatives that we're then going to evaluate and test to form the basis of the draft general plan, which will then be analyzed in the draft DIR and adopted a couple of years from now. So we're still got a way to go in this process, and we're going to be getting public input and your involvement at each step along the way. No decisions are going to be made here today. We're just at the process of brainstorming ideas for further study. The concerns that I said a few minutes ago that we've already heard about have cut across departments, they cut across disciplines, and so this is not just a community development department effort. The city can respond in the general plan to these issues, but the city can also work with the Public Works Department on issues around transportation and pedestrian and bicycle improvements and infrastructure improvements. The city is already pursuing grants to study these topics through parallel efforts in addition to the general plan. We're also partnering with the San Mateo County Health Department, who can help us understand the potential public health and equity impacts of general plan and land use decisions, and also advise us on strategies for building healthy and equitable communities. So we are doing a lot through the general plan, and we're reaching out to other experts and other planning, parallel planning processes as well. That's a little bit of context about the general plan, and I want to dive in now to what we're going to be doing today and talking about the study areas that are on the map and table in front of you, and also the land use alternatives process. This is all building up to considering, as part of the general plan update, not only changes to the policies and actions that the city will undertake, but also what we call the general plan land use map. So one important piece of the general plan is a map that designates each parcel in San Mateo for a certain type and intensity of use. This map, it guides what can be built where in San Mateo. It might affect your own property, might affect your neighbor's property. So it's an important map. And the process to consider any potential changes to this map is going to be a very careful and deliberate one. We're going to be creating alternatives, evaluating those alternatives, and then mixing and matching the best of those based on the outcomes of that evaluation to create what we call a preferred alternative that would be the basis for any changes to this map. So that's the ultimate end goal of the steps that we're working on today. We're going to be creating a range of alternatives through a lot of different sources of input. We're going to get input from this workshop here today. We've already gotten input from the pop-up events I described a few minutes ago. Soon we're going to be launching an online version of a map-based exercise where you can offer additional comments, or folks who couldn't be here today can offer their comments. And always through the website at strivesanmateo.org, we are accepting your written comments. You can write letters the old-fashioned way if that works better for you. We're going to then take the alternatives to the General Plan Subcommittee and the Planning Commission and to the City Council. So there's many steps of consideration for the range of alternatives that are going to be studied. After we have that range, we're going to be evaluating the alternatives. So this is going to be a very in-depth evaluation that's going to look at things, it's going to quantify how much development would be allowed under each one of the alternatives. We anticipate that we'll be looking at a range of different types and amounts of development. The overall character of the alternative, the kinds of transportation impacts it might have, the potential for displacement under each alternative, meaning displacement of people who live here today, potential public health impacts, a whole range of different topics that we're going to look at in a fair amount of detail to help you as the community understand the trade-offs and the pros and cons among the alternatives. And then we're going to bring that evaluation back to you and talk with you about it and talk with your decision makers about it before any decisions are made about putting the pieces together to make a preferred land use alternative. So today, what we're asking you to do in your small group is to take a few minutes. If there's anybody you haven't met, finish introducing yourselves. Please, you're probably going to want to take a few minutes to look at the materials. I'm about to walk you through the materials on your table, but you might want to orient yourself to those in your group when you have a chance. And then we're going to be asking you to use the Legos that you see on your table, have a little bit of fun, bring a curious mind to this exercise, and talk with each other about what types of jobs, what types of housing, and what types of transportation improvements you might want us to consider when we create that range of alternatives. So let me go through your materials that you have. You have what we call the base map. That's the very big map on your table. And on that map, you'll see the study areas. So these are 10 study areas throughout the city where we think change is probably most likely to occur. These study areas were arrived at through our last round of outreach and public meetings. And this map is the map that we got direction on from your city council most recently in October about the 10 study areas to examine. So that's where we're going to be focusing our attention. You also have place types menu and Legos. I'm going to talk more about those in just a second. Pens and markers for any additional notes you want to make. And you have a comment card. So if you have additional comments that you want to offer to amplify your own thoughts or what your group is saying, please feel free to fill out a comment card. We're going to collect all of those. I'm going to go through some of the pieces of information one by one here. The first is the study areas information handout. So that's an 11 by 17 piece. It has two sides. On one side is the 3 maps. Those maps show you some of the key environmental hazards affecting San Mateo and how the study areas map onto those. Flooding, sea level rise, wildfire hazards, those are some of the issues we've heard come up over and over again. So that's the mapping that we have provided. We also have the current general plan land use map in case you have questions about what's allowed today in the study areas, the general plan map and the zoning map. And so the study areas are shown with the black diagonal lines on both of those 2 maps. And then on the reverse is some information about existing development in each one of the study areas and comparing that to the total citywide column. So that's a resource for you in case you have questions. And again, just a reminder that if you have questions about what's on the ground in a study area today, how your changes might affect that study area, all of that is what we're going to provide you with more information on when we do our evaluation. The next important piece is what we're calling the place types menu. So this is a collected, stapled set of 11 by 17 pieces of paper with pictures of buildings. And that has all the different types of development that correspond to the Lego colors that we have for you. So if you have an idea about residential development, we want to hear from you about what kind of residential development. If you're interested in an alternative that would consider new housing in an area, are you thinking about single family housing? Are you thinking about apartments? Are you thinking about higher intensity, medium intensity? That's part of what we want to hear from you about. And there's a range of different types on the place types menu. And each one corresponds to some Legos, except in the case of the transportation improvements, you can use markers to tell us about those. Those are on the back page. So your table has a bag of Legos, and we want to keep this we absolutely know that planning for the future is a very serious business and that the decisions that we're talking about are serious. And we think there's an opportunity to have a little bit of fun, a little bit of creativity, and we want for you to think about hands-on ways to communicate your ideas. So we want to try giving you that opportunity today with the Legos. You have Legos in various configurations and stacks in your bag that we're going to ask you to place on the map to represent your ideas about an alternative that could be studied. So what matters here is the color of the Legos and the number of the Legos in the stack. Some of your Legos have 2 dots on top. Some of your Legos have 8 dots on top. There's all different shapes and sizes of Legos. We wanted to give you a variety, right? So, but what matters is the color and how many are in the stack. So these Legos do not correspond to a specific amount of development. They don't mean a certain number of units. They don't mean a specific number of feet in height. They mean a general type of development that corresponds to the pictures on your place type menu. So we're kind of thinking very conceptually here. You may have more questions about the Legos and the place types menu, and your facilitator can help you with those, or please raise your hand and somebody will come around and help your table answer questions. So we're about to dive into the small group workshops, and the rest of our time is going to be for you to talk to each other and come up with your ideas. As we do that, again, I started out saying that our goal is to have an inclusive and informed dialogue. We are very grateful to you for being here. We appreciate each one of you and your input, your ideas, and your questions. So please, as you're speaking to each other today, speak from your own experience, listen and understand all of the points of view at your table, including those that are different from the ones that you arrived with. Be curious about understanding those different points of view. Make sure that everyone at your table has a chance to participate and feels included in the discussion. And just remember that if questions do come up, please make a note of those. We want to hear about your ideas and your questions. And with that, I want to wish you the best. We're very excited to see what you come up with. And it's time to dive right in. So have at it. Thank you so much. All right, thank you so much for these great conversations. This is fantastic. Yeah, give yourselves a round of applause. Way to go. Way to go. I really appreciate all of the time and attention and thoughtfulness that has gone into your conversations this morning. Facilitators at the table, if you could, you and your note takers could work together to just snap a quick picture of your table map to make sure that we have a record of it before we start breaking down. And then we want to offer each table opportunity to tell us a little bit about what you talked about. So I think it might be most intuitive if we just go in order. Table 1 is Kathy's table back there. So we are going to start with you guys, and then if table 2, 3, 4, etc., if you can just bring your notes up and be ready to come give the report back. Table 1, are you ready, or would you like us to start with table 2? Yeah. All right, so other facilitators, if you come on up here and use the mic. If everybody that's going to be giving a report back could just make your way up here so that we can move through this. We're going to hear for about a minute and a half or so from each table so that we finish on time. There's a baby shower in this room starting next, so we got to make room for them. Thank you, Kathy.
Okay. All right, so table 1, we pretty much had agreement across the table. We never had any disagreements. We looked at a lot of the study areas as having a lot of mix of uses. So not sometimes vertical, but not always vertical. Sometimes just just acknowledging that we do want to have multiple uses within the area so that there's services provided. A lot of agreement towards having the medium density housing in study areas, which is the 4 to 8 story buildings with occasional 9+ story buildings here and there to add density, but really more of a general prototype. We really wanted to see more dispersed plazas and playgrounds, little small pocket parks and public areas in all our areas. We talked a lot about circulation issues and making it easier to get across town and connect neighborhoods, looking at pedestrian and bicycle improvements. We got utopian, dreaming about a different kind of El Camino where you could comfortably bike down it with protected bike lanes, with wide sidewalks. That was a really different vision. We also talked a bit about protecting some of the key services in the community, like those auto repair uses that no one likes to go to, but we all kind of need to have in our community, and making sure that things like that can stay. Did I miss anything else, table 1? Okay.
So our suggestion is concept-oriented and looking at the future and what some of those future neighborhood developments might look like and what are the needs, specifically maintaining the culture of the small town atmosphere reflected in whatever development decisions are made. Again, thinking aloud about tomorrow's needs, transportation, what that might be, support development, look at area development needs, again, groceries, transportation, housing, and health care facilities as well. And then developing certain things and services around schools where you have space already. So again, you can maintain and keep the kind of culture that you've developed in San Mateo. We have more specific ideas on our list, but these are area, or rather themes, that we've come up with.
Table 3. So yes, difficult issues, a lot of different perspectives. Everybody came together harmoniously. So I appreciate everybody's contributions today. Yes. Yeah, reflecting the consensus of the table, I think we had higher density residential in general, specifically around transit-oriented development, so around the Caltrain and also higher mixed use, so whether that's commercial residential in the same building. Also more parks and open space, so and also these privately owned public open spaces as well. So this combination of new development having, paseos or rooftop, just more space for people to recreate and breathe. Generally also better transit, pedestrian connections. So better feeding from the community, from the neighborhoods down into the central business district and to transit, and including better and more frequent transit on El Camino Real, but also protected bike lanes on some of the secondaries like Delaware and Norfolk. Commercial housing linkage was another concept. So especially around big tech bringing a lot of new jobs to the community, having a better jobs to housing ratio there, and when approving those. So some of these are outside of land use, but more on policy recommendations. There was conversation around a citywide residential parking permit or policy related to parking. So with there was a recognition with more density, it's going to put more pressure on parking, and to have a thoughtful approach to that citywide. Also tied to this was both affordable housing, whether that was support for ADUs or inclusionary zoning in additional development, but also referral to preservation of smaller businesses. So an interest in whether it's inclusionary housing, but policies that support smaller and not necessarily chain store retail. And also, so generally support for more mixed use, better transit and pedestrian and transit, and as part of that is considering the impacts on the adjacent neighborhoods. So it's the spillover effects of whether it's parking, trash, etc. So looking at those types of issues. Cool, thank you.
I'm coming from Table 4 here, and we echoed a lot of the desire for mixed use along transit centers, getting residential in on top of small-scale retail and a more kind of shoppable, walking, pedestrian-friendly corridors where you don't need to go out to a box store, a big box store, to go to the hardware store or that sort of thing. You can stay in your neighborhood. Another concept was weighing office buildings with housing and the impact on traffic, and that if you have office parks, that has the potential for using shuttle buses, and you might end up with less cars in that neighborhood because of that. Another thing that got brought up was in the single-family dwelling areas, residential neighborhoods, lifting restrictions on ADUs, accessory dwelling units, and making it easier to accommodate and add housing to our neighborhoods. And just echoing the better pedestrian, bike-friendly connections along the whole kind of transit corridor. That's what we got.
Hello, we were Table 5. I'll keep it fast here just because we have a few minutes left. Our group really echoed what's been discussed already, which was improving increasing housing around transit, so a lot of focus on transit-oriented development. There was a discussion of a future of light rail along El Camino Real, or a a dedicated bus lane, or maybe even someday an El Camino with no cars. So that was kind of a 2040 big idea. A lot of discussion of bike and pedestrian connections along the major areas along El Camino, as well as near 101, the connections across, and then along even 92 maybe. Discussion of improving circulation in study area 7 with that peninsula interchange right there. It's really difficult right now. And then as well as increasing office, maybe downtown or in the study area 3 near that Hayward Caltrain station. And then as well as other groups have said, definitely pairing housing with some neighborhood commercials so we can decrease the trips you have to take by car. So that's really what we discussed in group 5. Thank you.
Hi there, I was table number 6, and a lot of the housing mixed use things that we talked about have already been said, so I'm going to focus on transportation, which we talked a lot about. We also thought it would be really cool if El Camino could be carless, but we realized that it's a very important corridor, and so we thought maybe Claremont would be a good place that you could shut down so you could have bikes, pedestrians, perhaps Delaware, but it is more, you've got schools and things, and so maybe it could be more of an active transportation corridor. And then we thought El Camino would be a really good spot to have some emerging technologies to help quicken transit frequency. And then also there was an idea that study area number 10 could be a spot that could have a lot of mixed use development, create somewhat of a village, and then have really good transit and emerging technology transit options on a corridor between study area 10 and the Hayward Park.
Okay, table number 7. So again, I think we had a lot of interest in mixed-use buildings. So like commercial at the bottom and then residential on top. A lot of interest in small businesses, so preserving small businesses as well. We had some really great points about preserving the history of downtown San Mateo. So leaving like historical sites untouched and not like building high-rises around them. However, in other areas, there were interests in building high-rises or mid-rise to high-rise residential areas as well. When it comes to public parks, we had some ideas of like more smaller parklets all throughout San Mateo County. But yeah, I think I'll keep it to that. Thank you.
Table 8. We were visionary and thought that El Camino could be the grand boulevard that it is needed to be. We decided that it was a major corridor for the city for all sorts of interesting and innovative kinds of transportation. We offered a lot, there was a lot of discussion about how to create viable areas within the community facing sea level rise, and we have basically created a new kind of concept of buildings that are way up off the ground and with water washing underneath them. That's pretty much it.
All right, I'm representing Table 9. We had similar ideas of mixed-use housing and commercial and office uses along El Camino Real and the Caltrain station, but wanting to be mindful of protecting existing homeowners and renters, so be mindful of displacement. Stepping back building height near single-family neighborhoods, but also exploring increased density in existing single-family neighborhoods, specifically R2 and R3, the missing middle. And what else? Protecting our existing light industrial areas so we can still, get our car fixed, and improving bike and pedestrian safety along Delaware and El Camino Real.
At table 10, we're interested in accessible housing for seniors, youth, and those little casitas for single families. And also, they are really concerned about safety. They think that there should be more speed bumps to slow down the traffic, better transportation, and affordable also. And I think, yes, we are all the things we were discussing at our table too. But they're more interested on those little casitas for the little families. Thank you. All right. Well, I wanted to thank you all for being here today. I think today was just a huge testimony to how our community can come together and really have informed dialogue around a table and come to some consensus. So a big round of applause to all of you for taking time out of your Saturday to be here.